How do I start taking conscious actions? Because we are so reactive, aren't we? Is anybody still struggling with reacting to things? With old beliefs? So, one of the ways that I've found has been most powerful for me, and I'm by no way a guru, I'm not here preaching, but it certainly had massive effects in my life, was when I started to sit this Vipassana meditation. And it's a non-sectarian technique, although the Buddha did sort of bring it to the world. And it's effectively, there's centres all over the world. I think there's about 140 of them now. And this guy, Goenka-ji, brought it out again in 1969, 1970. And isn't it amazing? In that time, there was virtually no centres in the world. Now I think there's 149 or 150 odd centres. There's no advertising, no marketing. It's all word of mouth. Nobody gets paid 1 cent. It's totally voluntary, the whole process of serving and the money that gets donated. And there's now just all these centres. There's no hotel chain in the world has a record like that. So there's something going on there. But anyway, the commitment is that you sign your life away for 10 days and you'll go to a centre. I've been to, there's one at Blackheath. I think there's a few in Australia, but I've done Blackheath and Pomona many times. And for 10 days you commit to give your car keys over, your wallet and your mobile phone, so your connections with the outside world. And you commit to not talk for 10 days, not to any of the other students, not make eye contact with any of the other students, not even a gesture, not even hold the door open for them. You're there on your own to work on yourself. And that's a pretty big commitment because people are so busy today to find 10 days to do that. But I've done 3 and 4 in a year, and the results are just amazing that you get in your life. But what happens is for the first 3 days, and the only reason I'm telling you this is to teach you a way to possibly not react. Okay? So for the first 3 days, you'll start to practice a technique called Anapana, which is just observing your breath as it is. Not as you want it to be, as Goenka-ji says. There's a lot of other techniques of rebirthing and Satori breathing where you control your breath, and they have their own effect. But this is you sitting and just observing your breath as it is, whether it's quick or slow, left nostril, right nostril, whatever it is. Now that sounds really easy, doesn't it? Because your breath's with you all the time, isn't it? So I challenge those of you who have never heard of this to go home tonight and just try and sit on your butt for an hour and just observe your breath. Now when I say you're observing it, you're just observing it coming in and out. How it feels, is it warm, is it quick, is it slow? So what happens is, of course, 1, 2 breaths, 3 breaths, my first girlfriend, what she did to me. Oh, hang on, I'm supposed to be observing my breath, and you bring it back. Oh, and then you'll be off on what you did at school. Oh, gee, I'm supposed to be observing my breath. You'll be lucky to get 2 or 3 breaths in as a new sitter, and your mind's gone. And on the first night, every night, Goenka-ji does an hour of discourse, and he'll say, oh, what a fleeting mind you have. What a chattering mind you have. So it's good that you're not talking to anyone else because there's plenty of voices in here, let me tell you. So, but what it's designed to do in that 3 days is to build your focus or your concentration of your mind so that you're consciously aware of certain things. Because all those other thoughts were just reactions of past and future. They're all reactions. And then hopefully at the end of the first 3 days, you'll be having longer periods of time where all you're doing is observing your breath. And as an old sitter now, and when I say I'm an old sitter, I've done maybe 7 or 8 sits. I know people have done 30 and 40 sits, and they do them now for 20, 30, 45 and 90 days. Can you imagine sitting for 90 days without talking to anyone? Steph? Not impossible. Mission impossible. But at the end of the 3 days, hopefully your focus is longer, a longer period of time of you being able to just observe your breath. And there's times I can go a whole hour now, and then you'll actually transcend and do things above mind and matter. Let me tell you, you can have some amazing trips. But at the end of the 3 days then, during the 3 days, let me say, what happens is because you're sitting cross-legged for 14 hours a day, are you used to doing that? So what happens? For those people who have sat in the room, what do you start experiencing? Pain. Absolutely. Now, if you're sitting, if you're feeling some pain or some itchiness, what do? You're having some itchiness right now. So you start to scratch. You react, don't you? So when you're sitting in all this pain, and for me, I used to be a long-distance runner, it felt like there was a surgeon with a scapula trying to pull my patella off. And you're sitting there, so your unconscious mind is going, Mark, move. But you don't move. Okay? So you just observe the sensation, and you bring your conscious awareness back. I can see some Vipassana sitters having flashbacks. Bring your conscious awareness back to the breath. So your unconscious mind is now toying with you, making you want to move and react, but you don't. You bring it back to the conscious awareness of your breath. So at the end of the 3 days, then you then start to practice Vipassana, where you move your conscious awareness then to the top of your head, and you'll start what they call scanning and looking for sensations on your body. And you'll observe either nothingness, blind spots. A lot of new setters will have blind spots, or there might be itchiness or heat or pain or whatever it is. And the technique is designed for you to observe it objectively, not from a reaction point of view. So if you observe a nice sensation or banga, full free, that's great, but don't be attached to it. If you observe pain, then that's fine too, but don't be attached to the fact that you've got pain, because all misery comes from wanting things that you don't have or not wanting things that you do have. And so then what happens is you'll start to observe things from a detached point of view. So now when I experience pain, I'll notice it in this knee, not my knee. Not I, mine, my knee, my pain. It's just this knee, and you'll be very detached from it. And it's a very, very powerful process. Because we think that we're these physical beings, and we're imprisoned in these physical bodies, right? When you can start to detach from the physical pain or the physical sensations, you can then start to detach from other things in your life. So when someone rings you, like your former partner, or somebody that you owe money to, whatever it is, you can stop reacting, come back and observe the sensations, and start taking conscious actions. Because everything that you perceive will have a biological reaction in your body. Everything. You're just not aware of it. But the more time you spend sitting, the more you'll be aware of it. But I'll give you some really simple examples. I was out shopping and cooking for you all day yesterday, so hopefully you have a beautiful lunch today. And hopefully when you come out and see it, you'll see it and smell it, you'll get a tummy rumble and your mouth will start salivating. So you'll get some biological reactions in your body, won't you? When I see Steph get out of the shower in the morning, I get a biological reaction somewhere else. So every time we perceive or hear or something comes into our world, we have a biological reaction. You just don't observe it because you're so busy running around with this sensual bombardment and keeping up with the things that you think you need to keep up with. But when you can start to observe it and not react, your life will be so much happier. So where do our beliefs come from? Don't they come from things that we've seen or heard before? Through our parents or our school and all those sorts of things? Yeah? Do we have the same set of beliefs as a child born up in the Sudan? We have different beliefs, don't we? So let me tell you about a personal experience I had quite a few years back where I thought I'd put this theory to the test. I had sold my company in Sydney and relocated to the Gold Coast, and I needed a car for my partner. I was driving along the Gold Coast Highway and I saw this Celica on the side of the road. And gee, I looked at it and I thought, looks like a $20,000 car, but it had $9,500 in the window. So I thought, gee, that's cheap. Anyway, I rang the number that was on the windscreen, and this chap answers the phone, yeah. So straight away, of course, I'm thinking, bad. This person's bad. These are the thoughts and judgments I had straight away. He turns up about 5 or 10 minutes later. He's covered in tattoos. He's got one tooth left in his head for opening his VB. And now I'm seeing, really bad. This guy's fresh out of jail. Listen to all my judgments. Anyway, we take the car for a drive, and the car drives really good. So, him bad, car good. Mark confused. So we get back, and I say to this chap, I think his name was Greg, and I said, Greg, I'm quite happy with the car. However, I'd like to take it to the RACQ and have it checked out. He says to me, nah, mate, look at the price. It'll be sold today. So I'm thinking to myself, alarm bells are going off. So I thought, well, I'll give this theory a try. So I said to him, Greg, are you a man of your word? And there was a bit of a pause between us, and he looked at me and he said, yep. I said, well, I'll tell you what, Greg, I'm happy to give you full price, the $9,500 that you're asking, if you can give me a gentleman's agreement, just a handshake, of a 3-month warranty on the car. He looked a little puzzled and he said, full price? I said, yeah, full price, Greg. And he said, okay, deal. So I bought the car. Anyway, I take it home and I explain the whole story to my partner at the time. And she looks at me and thinks, bad. Me bad. Silly decision. And lo and behold, what happens a week later after bringing the car home? It doesn't start. So where do you think I'm at? Do you remember I spoke before about how we're such reactionary beings? What did Mark of old want to do? I wanted to react. I wanted to ring this guy Greg, call him a few names, and accuse him of selling me a lemon. So I rang my life coach at the time, Mylene, and I said to her, this is the situation. She said, well, Mark, have you even called this guy and allowed him to show up to be trustworthy? And of course I hadn't. I judged and hung, dried and quartered this guy in my mind. What do you think would have happened if I rang him and abused him? That's right, he would have told me to stick it. And I could have been right. I could have been right about people being untrustworthy. So Mylene said to me, well, Mark, go and sit and meditate for an hour, get into a loving space and give the guy a call. I did it. Begrudgingly, I did it. But eventually I built up the courage to call him, and the phone call went really well. He actually said, do you know what auto leaders is? And I said, yes. He said, well, get the car towed there, in his gruff voice, and I'll pay for the towing. So that surprised me. Anyway, we met at Auto Leaders about 3 or 4 days later, and you know, we're waiting in the waiting room, and it's uncomfortable. I'm uncomfortable, especially. And the head mechanic comes out and says, well, gentlemen, it's not good news. The head gasket is blown on the motor. And if you know anything about mechanics, that means the motor's no good. He said, look, it's going to cost roughly $1,500 to fix. Well, my heart's pounding. This guy, Greg, after probably, it seemed like 10 minutes, but after probably 20 or 30 seconds, he looked at me and he said, I'll fix it. Well, you could have knocked me over with a feather. And I looked Greg, left eye, and I said to him, you've got no idea how important today is for me. And he looked at me and said, me too. But it showed me that I was responsible for the outcome that happened in my life. I didn't react. I took the time to sit and make a conscious action, and I therefore changed the result that was in my life. And you know what? Maybe I'm the first guy in a long time that gave Greg the opportunity to show up to be trustworthy instead of ringing him with abuse. So that was my first experience, and since then I've had a multitude of experiences that have told me that this theory works. What I want to run through now is I want to look at some of the influencing factors that you might be allowing yourself to be influenced by. And so now you can maybe be a bit more conscious about the environment that you're putting yourself into. Yeah? What things might be influencing us? What about this? If anybody's done any motivational work, or like Tony Robbins will say, fear and love, or pain and pleasure. Fear and pain are the biggest motivators. They're the ones that they use the most on us. We've all got the fear of terrorists and war and swine flu and all that sort of stuff, don't we? Well, why do we have that fear? Aren't we allowing ourselves to have that fear by watching certain things and reading certain things without possibly doing the research as to what's true behind it? So maybe just start looking at being conscious about what your environment is. What about the media? Steph and I got rid of we didn't get rid of the TV, but we turned Austar off about 3 or 4 months ago. Not that we ever used to watch the news, maybe once a month. I call it the comedy channel, right? I watch it for a bit of a giggle. But, you know, we just got rid of it altogether. And so now we just attract the things that we need to hear. Okay? I did a workshop, I think 3 or 4 workshops ago, and I had no idea that the oil was spewing out all through the oceans. I had no idea. I'm glad that I know now, but I don't need to sit and hear that 10 times and whatever the propaganda is around that. What about religion? Religioning people. I'm not here to run religion down, and I certainly don't want any religious debates to break out in the audience as they have in the past. But yes, I think that the churches of the old day have a fair bit to answer for. You know, they used to disembowel people in public. People used to bring their kids to watch it for heresy. Wow, well, it's bad old days. What about the governments? I know I'm already in a room full of believers by running around the room this morning, but just be careful of what your government tells you. Currency. Even though I have a pretty good understanding of how currency rules our life, is anybody else still feeling ruled by currency? Like when I went to the service station yesterday to fill up, I couldn't give the guy a hug. He wanted some of that stuff. So we're all still... I said, somebody needs a hug. I said, no, I need $50. We're still certainly all ruled by currency in some way, shape or form, and we're going to have a look at that today. What about the propaganda factories that were instituted in the Industrial Revolution as somewhere to put the kids while the parents went off to work? The propaganda factories. Our little ones will not be going to a propaganda factory. Language. Does everybody understand how much all the 5,000 dialects have been adulterated and manipulated? So if you're not, there's some great DVDs you can watch. But most of the 5,000 dialects came from the ancient Hebrew. And the ancient Hebrew had no vowels. Vowels have been introduced to hollow words out and actually change the vibration of them. And a lot of those words have the opposite meaning to what you think. Okay? I'll give you a real simple example. I think I've done this for some of you before. So if I say to you normal, normal has a certain meaning, doesn't it? What does abnormal mean? Is that the opposite? So if you put ab in front of anything, it's the opposite, isn't it? So why do they call them Aborigines? They're telling them they're not original, so you don't have any rights. A lot of the words that you think have a certain meaning have the opposite meaning. Here's another one, whether you believe it or not. David Wynne-Miller, who's a self-professed judge, says AM means no. No mercy, CA, is Latin for sheep. No mercy for the sheep. Australia. Where do you think the name Australia came from? It's amazing how some people think, what, those guys sat around with the triangular hats on and had a few glasses of Chardonnay and said, I know, Australia. There's no mistake to where the words came from. Does anybody remember their periodic table from school? What's the derivative for gold? AU. Strata is land of the Southern Adjustment and IA is corporation. So it's the corporation of the Southern Adjustment for gold. So a lot of the words that you think have a certain meaning, you really need to start looking at what they really mean for you. What the true meaning is, because I can tell you when you get to the higher levels of court, they know. And a lot of the documents that you're signing, you're actually committing the fraud, and we're going to run through that today. Because you are signing these documents without the knowledge, which is actually an unrevealed contract, but that's another matter. So I'll talk a little bit about language throughout the day today. I've been studying for a fair while now Judge David Wynne-Miller's work. It's called Quantum Language, and it was really heavy going to start with. It's like learning a new language. But I went head down, bum up at it for about 12 months, and I can now kind of write in the truth and speak in the truth, and it's a completely different way of constructing sentences. Anybody remember how people used to speak back when Shakespeare was around? Is it like we speak now? No, we speak slang. Where did the slang come from? Well, and why has the slang come about? So I'll just give you a quick lesson in English and what Old English was. Out of all the words, being adverbs, verbs, pronouns, so forth, and nouns, what's the only word that is of substance? A noun. A noun is the only thing of substance, isn't it? So do you know to create a noun, you need what's called the prepositional phrase, which is a preposition, an article, making a noun. So for example, it might be for, being the preposition, the, being an article, witness, being a noun. When you say the witness, the becomes an adverb, which is a modifier, modifying the noun to a verb. So when you identify yourself as the witness, you're identifying yourself as a verb, which is fiction, in a fictional court. So if I say the pen, the is an adverb, and the pen becomes a verb. Well, it's not. It's for the pen. Or for the witness with the knowledge is, and sentences are to have one verb. How many sentences do you see now? I've got 5 verbs in them, about 7 different messages. Well, it's misleading. So this quantum language, what he's done is he's broken the language down to a mathematical interface, and it's just fascinating. So all the words have a number next to them from 1 to 10, and the sentences work whether you read them front to back or back to front, like a mathematical equation. Does a mathematical equation, is it the same whether you do it back to front or front to back? It's the same result, isn't it? So are these sentences and paragraphs that he structures. I'd urge you to have a look at his work. It is really heavy going. I believe it's going to be the way forward in unveiling all the illusion.
What's his name?
His name is Judge David. I'll write it down. No. David Wynne-Miller. I'll go through what the full colons mean shortly. But have a look at the language. It's just a fascinating subject. If anybody's ever studied that, and I think we're going to watch something throughout the day that'll talk about Hebrew and Sanskrit and how it's all been changed so that things have the opposite meaning. No wonder we're confused. Food. How are we controlled by food? Does anybody know how we're controlled by food? Some awesome movies, guys, that you can get. There's Food Matters. I think The Structure of Food is another one. There's a whole heap of them. There's a new one that's just come out called One Man, One Cow, One Planet. And it's all about how food has been manipulated. The farms, the seeds, the pesticides, all that sort of stuff has been manipulated. And the food has a whole lot less nutrients in it to what it used to. It also goes as far as things like aspartame and the fluoride in the water. Is anybody hearing that for the first time? If you guys drink diet, stop. Please stop. Diet is full of aspartame, which is one of the worst things. Don't drink tap water. You know, we're so lucky. Steph and I live on 10 acres. We've got our own chooks and veggies and tank water. Tap water is full of fluoride, and fluoride is what the Nazis used to subdue the Jews when they were in the concentration camps. You can Google all this stuff. Don't take my word for it. But please start being very conscious of what Don Tolman says of what you put into your body temple. You've only got the one of them. Okay. The medical industry, we've already sort of spoken about through Don Tolman what the medical industry does. But what are the two biggest industries in the world? Banking and pharmaceutical. And then resources, the oil, closely followed. So these are massive industries. I'll give you some very quick examples. Because of my condition, I have to go and get my blood tested every now and then. And the last time that I was in there, the doctor said, "How old are you?" I said, 43. And he said, "Oh, we better get you tested for prostate." And I said, "Go your hardest, mate, let's see." So, and then he tested me for a few other things. Hey? Oh, he was taking the blood out anyway, and I just wanted to see, just for a bit of humour. So I went back a week later. Actually, I got a letter in the mail. No, not a week later. Steph and I went and sat a Vipassana course, and we get back, and of course I want to make sure that my cell count's all good with the condition that I had. And I come back to a letter from the doctor's surgery saying, "You must contact the surgery as a matter of urgency, or this matter is urgent." And so Steph and I were like, whoa. I jumped on my motorbike, had a bit of a ride, and I thought, okay, don't go back into fear. If something's happened, it's happened. And we had a couple of hours of not so nice thoughts. And then I went through the rest of the mail and saw another letter from the same doctor's surgery, and it said, "Oh, we apologise, we should have said not urgent." but look at the reality I created for myself just by a few words on a letter. Anyway, so I went back to this doctor and said, okay, what's the result? And everything was fine except for my triglycerol, which is a triglycerol, is that right, anyone in the room? And my bad cholesterol was up, my good cholesterol was okay. And he said, so I better prescribe you some cholesterol medication and something for your triglycerol as well. I'm like, he started writing this out. And I said, well, don't you think you should talk to me about my diet? Oh, well, he was Indian. He said, no, I'm telling you, this is the quickest way. Most people don't do anything about their diet. I said, well, thanks, Raji, but I'll do something about my diet. Now, the fact was I didn't really care about those tests, and I had a breakfast and a cup of chai tea with honey in it, so I'm not surprised that those levels were up. Steph was the same. We're having a home birth, and she had to go off and get tested just to find out what blood type she was. And she went back to the doctor, and he was not the same doctor, but he was amazing as well. He said, oh, how are you going with the pregnancy? She went, oh, I'm a bit tired. He goes, you're depressed. She said, no, I'm tired. Well, if you're depressed, how about I give you something? And he started to write out a script for antidepressant tablets. So it's an industry. It's an industry, and they go to university, uni meaning one version of information. Who do you think funds and supports this whole industry?